The crisis beyond the stars. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber was unlike any place in the galaxy. A massive dome stretching thousands of feet high, its walls made of shimmering quantum glass that reflected the light of distant stars. On this day, the normally calm and orderly proceedings of the Council had come to an abrupt halt. The atmosphere was thick with unease, as a peculiar disturbance was unfolding before the representatives of 317 species. The quantum display above the central dais, usually a perfect representation of the galaxy's interconnected systems, was glitching. A strange error code flashed repeatedly, each more cryptic and terrifying than the last. The representatives, who prided themselves on their sophisticated technologies, watched in disbelief as their most secure data systems were corrupted by an anomaly that should have been impossible. On Archive World Epsilon, the galaxy's most secure data vault, the situation was even more dire. Home to the combined knowledge of 62 million years of galactic civilization, Epsilon was where the most dangerous secrets of the galaxy were stored. Secrets that could unravel the very fabric of society if they fell into the wrong hands. But now, the vault was under siege by something no one could understand. The anomaly had breached its first layer of security and was now rapidly spreading, consuming everything in its path. A murmur rippled through the room as High Counselor Zixo, the Council's most respected leader, rose from their seat. Zixo's form, an ever-shifting array of crystalline facets, seemed to tremble with uncertainty, a rare sign of distress. With 7 sensory clusters aligned to the quantum display, the High Counselor's voice echoed through the chamber. Administrator Chen, Zixo began, addressing Earth's representative to the Council. Your species has been part of the Galactic Council for barely 3 centuries. Surely, you understand that this crisis requires the attention of more established civilizations. From the far side of the room, Administrator Sarah Chen, Earth's senior representative, was hunched over an ancient tablet device. Her eyes were focused, her fingers tapping rapidly on the screen, a habit that was distinctly human and, to some of the more dignified alien representatives, unsettling. Chen didn't flinch at the High Counselor's remark. Instead, she spoke up, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable confidence. With all due respect, High Counselor, she said, her eyes still on the tablet. Your civilizations have spent the last 48 hours trying to resolve this using conventional methods. Meanwhile, the anomaly is devouring Archive World Epsilon's data cores. The situation is getting worse by the minute. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything. The room fell silent. The delicate balance of the galaxy's knowledge was teetering on the edge of destruction. The Pavoni ambassador, a towering being with long, translucent tentacles, rose with a harsh hiss of indignation. Their many limbs rippled in agitation, sending waves of electric pheromones into the air. Our quantum physicists have failed. The Pavoni ambassador snarled. We have seen no success in reversing the anomaly's progression. It is beyond the capabilities of our best minds. Chen glanced up briefly, her lips curling into a slight, knowing smile. I think it's time we tried something a little unconventional. The room's tension spiked as the delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah Chen's reputation was well known in the Council. Earth's track record for solving problems, especially in situations that others considered unsolvable, was unmatched. But her methods were unorthodox, to say the least. While some species considered it reckless, others had come to appreciate the unexpected brilliance that often accompanied Earth's improvised solutions. The High Counselor's crystalline form flickered, a signal of confusion. What do you mean? Chen leaned forward, setting the tablet aside and locking eyes with the High Counselor. We've had our share of crisis management back on Earth, she said with a cool, confident tone. We're not afraid to do what's necessary, even if it means going against the grain. Zixo's light dimmed slightly, acknowledging the truth in Chen's words. What exactly do you propose, Administrator? Sarah Chen's smile widened, a glint of mischief in her eyes. I propose we send in a team of humans, People who specialize in solving problems that everyone else believes are unsolvable. The chamber erupted in chaos. There were immediate protests from the hive mind of Sector 7, their collective voice filling the room in a cacophony of disapproval. The Ghost Confederation released a burst of stress pheromones, which quickly flooded the air recycling system, leaving the delegates gasping. "You deployed assets without council authorization," shouted a voice from the Sidera, a race known for their strict adherence to protocol. "Of course not," Sarah replied smoothly, unperturbed. "I merely suggested to certain members of our team that they might want to take some vacation time. Conveniently, a resort planet just happens to be located 2 light years from Archive World Epsilon. Pure coincidence." Before the council members could process this blatant circumvention of protocol, a new alert flashed across the quantum display. The anomaly had breached another layer of security. The data vault's quantum encryption was failing. The Technical Advisory Unit announced that the estimated time until total system collapse was a mere 6 hours, 17 minutes, and 43 seconds. Sarah Chen stood up, adjusting her simple, Earth diplomatic uniform, a stark contrast to the ornate robes of the other representatives. Her posture was commanding as she spoke again. "High Counselor, members of the Council, we can waste precious time debating proper procedures. Or we can let my team do what humans do best, solve impossible problems, even if it means breaking a few rules along the way." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Even the hive minds stopped processing data, their attention now fully on Sarah Chen. The stakes had never been higher. Zixo's crystalline form flickered again, a series of complex geometric patterns cycling in what could only be interpreted as a deep sigh. "The Council recognizes Earth's unique approach to crisis management," the High Counselor said at last, their voice tinged with reluctant acceptance. "You have emergency authorization. But," Zixo added, their tone firm, "we will send an observer. Senior Archivist Farron will accompany your team." A tall, ethereal figure stepped forward. Farron belonged to the VOR, an ancient species that had transcended physical form long ago. They existed as pure energy patterns, their very essence vibrating with strict adherence to rules and procedures. Known for their unwavering professionalism, the VOR were infamous for documenting every detail of any process, especially those that involved deviations from protocol. "I shall document all procedural violations for posterior review," Farron announced, their voice clear and resolute. Sarah Chen raised an eyebrow. "Perfect. I'm sure you'll find plenty to write about." As the council members reluctantly approved the emergency mission, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead, thinking of the team she'd assemble, the risks involved, and the immense challenge they would face. Humans had a knack for finding solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. But this would be different. This was a crisis that could threaten the entire galaxy, and Sarah was about to show the galaxy just what humans could do when faced with the impossible. The countdown to disaster was ticking, and time was running out. The unseen edge of human ingenuity. The quiet hum of the council chamber's quantum display filled the room, but the tension was palpable. A sense of urgency loomed as Administrator Sarah Chen stepped forward, her fingers still tapping away on her tablet. Beside her, Senior Archivist Farron floated in a luminous energy form, a stark contrast to the more physical beings around them. As the VOR had always done, Farron emitted no discernible emotion, their thoughts entirely focused on the task ahead. Sarah glanced over her shoulder at the assembled representatives of 317 species, all watching intently, some skeptical, others just plain nervous. She could feel the weight of their gaze, their judgment, especially from the more conservative factions. They wanted a solution, but they didn't want it the human way. Too unconventional, too unpredictable. But that was precisely why Sarah was here. Humans thrived in chaos, and when others saw a brick wall, humans found a way to climb over it. "I'll gather a team," Sarah said, her voice steady. "But let's be clear, this will not be easy. We're facing something unprecedented. Archive World Epsilon holds data so ancient and dangerous that entire civilizations would crumble if it fell into the wrong hands. The room shifted, and the murmurs began again. But this time, it wasn't protest. It was acknowledgement. The stakes were as high as they could possibly be. If the vault fell, the galaxy would be plunged into an age of chaos and uncertainty. Technologies and knowledge, locked away for millennia to prevent misuse, could very well be unleashed, ruthlessly exploited by enemies of peace. It was a potential disaster of galactic proportions. The decision to act. As the council adjourned, Sarah stood alone in the chamber for a moment, her eyes lingering on the quantum display, watching the error code blink ominously. It was as if the fabric of the galaxy itself was unraveling, piece by piece. The VOR's energy form hovered beside her, their pulses growing more intense as they observed her every move. "You seem unfazed," Farron said, their voice an ethereal hum. Sarah turned and gave a half-smile, though there was little humor in it. "It's not about being unfazed. It's about being focused. We have 6 hours and 17 minutes until this entire galaxy-wide vault is lost, and I'm betting that if we're going to pull this off, it's going to be because we take risks." "Risks," Farron repeated, as if the word itself were a curious concept. "That is not a principle of VOR logic." "Good thing you're not human, then," Sarah muttered, her fingers tapping once again on her tablet. The team she needed would be diverse, and she had to select the best of the best. People who could see the cracks in the system and think outside the box. But there was one person, one mind, that she knew she'd need first. A genius. Someone who operated with both chaos and precision. Someone human. The human engineer, Captain Elijah Hayes. Far from the Council's ivory tower, in a remote corner of the galaxy, Captain Elijah Hayes was working in a dimly lit workshop. A former military strategist turned rogue engineer, Hayes was a maverick with a reputation for doing the impossible. He specialized in one thing: taking broken things and making them work again, using nothing but raw human ingenuity. When Sarah's message came through, a secure channel, of course, to avoid unwanted attention, Hayes was elbow-deep in a salvage operation. His ship, the Axiom, was in the process of being retrofitted with scavenged parts from a dozen different species. It wasn't pretty, but Hayes didn't need pretty. He needed function, efficiency, and if it looked like a pile of junk on the outside, even better. His communication panel blinked to life. He glanced at it, his face lighting up when he saw Sarah's name. "Chen," he grinned, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "I thought you'd show up again. What's the crisis this time?" Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker. "The worst kind, Elijah. Archive World Epsilon's data cores are being consumed by a quantum anomaly. The Council doesn't know what's causing it, and conventional methods are failing. I need someone who can think on their feet, someone who's used to working under pressure." Hayes chuckled, wiping grease from his hands. "Pressure is my middle name. I'm guessing you need me to fix something. With a side of make it go boom, right?" Sarah couldn't help but smile. "I'll take that as a yes." Preparing for the impossible, Sarah and Farron traveled quickly to Axiom, where they found Elijah Hayes waiting in the dock, leaning against the hull of his ship, arms crossed. The Axiom was far from the most advanced vessel in the galaxy. It was a patchwork of various technologies, held together with a combination of human stubbornness and the brilliance of unorthodox engineering. It didn't look like much, but Sarah knew better than anyone that it had never been the ship that made the difference. It was the person flying it. "I'm assembling a team. You're first on the list," Sarah said. "The anomaly at Archive World Epsilon is growing. We need someone who can get their hands dirty and figure out how to shut it down before everything we know is lost." Hayes nodded, already walking toward the ship's interior. "You've got the right guy. But we'll need more than just me, right? This is going to be a mess." "That's the plan," Sarah replied with a grin. "Bring your best, Elijah. And I mean that literally. We're going to need everyone we can get. Building the team. The team Sarah was assembling was anything but conventional. Along with Hayes, she enlisted a handful of individuals whose skills transcended traditional methods. There was Kala, a former tech thief with a knack for hacking unbreakable systems, and Mara, a bioengineer who had once worked on creating human-augmented soldiers, but now focused on cybernetic enhancements. Both of them had a reputation for taking impossible odds and turning them into an advantage. Then there was Orion, a former diplomat turned exoanthropologist. Orion had a gift for understanding alien cultures and languages, often uncovering insights that others missed. His ability to build connections in hostile environments would be crucial when they faced the unknowns of Archive World Epsilon. And finally, the wild card, Kale, a human with no official military or scientific credentials, but an almost uncanny ability to solve complex puzzles and challenges using nothing more than his intuition and an odd sense of humor. He had saved Sarah's life more than once, and his unorthodox methods had a way of catching people off guard, usually when they least expected it. As the crew assembled aboard the Axiom, Sarah felt a flicker of hope in the midst of the overwhelming uncertainty. This was humanity's strength, the ability to form an unpredictable, but powerful, team under the most desperate of circumstances. The approach to Archive World Epsilon. As the Axiom roared to life, its engines humming with the power of human craftsmanship, the team set course for Archive World Epsilon. The path ahead was treacherous, with cosmic storms and ancient defense systems guarding the vault's secrets. But Sarah, Elijah, and the others knew that when the galaxy was faced with the impossible, humans often found a way, through resilience, creativity, and sheer force of will. And as the stars streaked by, Sarah couldn't help but think of one thing. If anyone could solve this crisis, it was the team she'd assembled. Because if the galaxy's knowledge was truly worth saving, then humans were the only ones who could handle it. Into the eye of the storm. The stars outside the Axiom streaked past like brilliant streaks of light, their glow barely reaching the ship's hull as they accelerated toward Archive World Epsilon. The mission was clear: breach the vault's defenses, navigate the dangerous quantum anomaly, and stop the total collapse of galactic knowledge. But as they got closer, the gravity of the task began to sink in. Inside the ship's command room, Sarah sat at the helm, her fingers dancing across the console as she directed the course. Elijah Hayes was tinkering with a set of old schematics, muttering to himself as he analyzed the anomaly's readings. Kala was perched over a data terminal, her sharp eyes scanning the incoming information, while Mara worked on enhancing the ship's systems. Orion stood at the back, his arms crossed, quietly observing the tension growing among the crew. 5 minutes to entry point, Sarah called out, breaking the quiet. Her voice was calm but firm, her usual composure barely masking the intensity of what lay ahead. Everyone ready. There was a moment of silence. Then, with a sharp glance, Elijah gave her a thumbs up, and Kala cracked her knuckles with a wicked grin. Mara adjusted her seat, her fingers hovering over the console, while Orion's eyes narrowed, scanning the celestial map for any signs of unexpected interference. Sarah's eyes briefly flicked to Farron, the VOR archivist who had been silently observing the humans for the past few hours. "You'll be ready too, right?" she asked, though she knew the answer. Farron's energy form pulsed faintly in acknowledgement, their cool demeanor unshaken by the tension in the air. "I shall document all violations," Farron replied, their voice smooth and deliberate. "Though I recommend no violations occur, Administrator." The crew chuckled, but the atmosphere remained thick with anticipation. Archive World Epsilon wasn't just any vault. It was the culmination of countless civilizations' knowledge, wisdom, and most importantly, their darkest secrets. The potential for disaster was off the charts. Yet, Sarah knew that if anyone could tackle such a monumental task, it was this group. The approach, breaching the barrier. As they neared the planet, the Axiom hit the edge of the anomaly's gravitational pull. The quantum distortion became tangible. Waves of energy surged outward from the planet's core, warping light and bending space. The ship's systems flickered momentarily before stabilizing, and Sarah felt a shiver crawl up her spine. This wasn't just a natural phenomenon. Something about this anomaly was alive, almost sentient. It was as if the galaxy itself was resisting their approach. "We're in," Calla said, her voice sharp as she adjusted the ship's sensor readings. "There's a quantum field around the planet that's more complex than anything I've seen. I can't promise our usual tricks will work. We're going to have to think outside the box." Mara's brow furrowed, but she nodded in agreement. "I've enhanced the ship's shields, but they're not designed to hold up against a sustained quantum storm. We'll need to move fast." Elijah leaned forward from his station, his eyes alight with determination. "Well, what do you suggest we do? Wait for the galaxy to implode?" "I think not." He pulled up a set of blueprints on the console, each layer of Archive World Epsilon's defenses meticulously detailed. Sarah studied the blueprints for a moment, her eyes narrowing. "No, we won't wait. We'll do what humans do best: improvise." She turned to Calla. "Break through the secondary defenses. We'll need access to the main vault's core before this storm breaks us apart." Calla grinned. "On it. I'll bypass the encryption protocols and get us inside, but we'll need to keep moving. I don't trust this anomaly. It's not just a glitch. It feels wrong." With the plan set, the Axiom dropped into the planet's atmosphere, pushing past the quantum barriers that were holding the ship at bay. Sarah's hands gripped the controls tightly, her heart pounding as they flew deeper into the storm. The ship rocked under the pressure, but she held steady. The vault's heartbeat. Minutes later, the Axiom made its final descent toward the main vault's landing bay. The ground shook beneath them as they passed through the protective layers of energy shields, and the quantum anomaly outside howled like a beast trapped in a cage. The storm was alive now, the anomaly pulsating like a living organism, feeding off the very fabric of space and time. As the ship touched down, Elijah was already on his feet, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "We've got 30 minutes tops before this whole place collapses on itself. We get in, we get out, and we don't ask questions." Sarah nodded, leading the charge. "Move out." The team rushed toward the vault's entrance, passing through reinforced steel doors that groaned as they opened. Inside, the air was cold and sterile. An ancient, almost sacred place. The walls were lined with data cores, each one holding the secrets of 1,000 worlds. But they weren't the only thing inside. Orion stepped forward, his senses tingling with the strange energy in the air. "Something's wrong," he murmured. "This doesn't feel like a typical vault. There's an intelligence behind this, something more than just quantum energy." Sarah paused, her hand resting on the wall. The pulse of the anomaly felt more intense here, as if the vault itself were alive. It was no longer just a physical barrier to knowledge. It was an extension of the anomaly, an inseparable part of it. "Calla, get the encryption system unlocked," Sarah ordered, breaking the silence. "We need access to the core before this thing overruns us." A flicker of humanity's strength. Calla, her fingers flying over the console, grinned when the system finally acknowledged her presence. "Done," she said, looking up at Sarah. "We've got access, but you're not going to like this. The core isn't just a storage unit. It's integrated with the anomaly. It's almost as if the data has been consumed, turned into a part of the storm." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Calla replied grimly, "that if we try to access it directly, we risk unleashing the full force of the anomaly. It could explode, destabilizing everything in the process." "Can we do it safely?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with urgency. "No," Calla said flatly. "Not unless we can stabilize the anomaly first." Farron's energy form pulsed at the edge of the room, their voice cool as always. "I shall assist. My species' quantum manipulation techniques may offer a temporary solution." Sarah didn't hesitate. Do it. We don't have time to waste. As Farron stepped forward, their energy shifting and humming with raw power, the anomaly outside seemed to grow louder, more chaotic. The storm raged against the walls of the vault, as if it were trying to break free. The deeper they went, the more they could feel it. The anomaly wasn't just a glitch, nor a freak accident. It was a conscious force, sentient and aware. And it wanted something. The human response. Unseen solutions. As Farron began manipulating the quantum core, the anomaly responded, writhing, expanding, then contracting. It was as if the very walls of the vault were breathing, alive with energy. Elijah's voice broke the silence, his tone flat but urgent. We need to get out of here. Now. Whatever you're doing, it's just making it worse. But Sarah, with a calmness that belied the growing tension around her, shook her head. No, humans don't back down. We adapt. The quantum storm screamed louder, but Sarah wasn't listening to the fear. She was listening to something far more important, the pulse of human ingenuity, the knowledge that, against all odds, humans always found a way. It wasn't just about brute force or overwhelming power. It was about knowing that every problem, no matter how impossible, had a solution if you dared to look closely enough. And just for a moment, Sarah allowed herself to believe that they might just pull this off. The heart of the anomaly. The vault's corridors felt colder as Sarah led the team deeper into the bowels of Archive World Epsilon. The storm outside raged with a fury they hadn't anticipated, sending occasional tremors through the structure. The walls of the vault, which had once held the wisdom of countless civilizations, now felt like a tomb, silent, ancient, and somehow aware. Sarah glanced back at her team. Each of them was visibly tense, their minds racing to comprehend the strange energy that seemed to bleed through every corner of the vault. Even Farron, the VOR archivist, had stopped their usual calm assessment, their energy pulses erratic as they monitored the anomaly's movements. The VOR's vast understanding of quantum manipulation seemed to falter in the face of the force they were up against. This place is alive, Orion muttered, his voice low as he walked beside Sarah. His eyes scanned the walls, which seemed to shimmer with an almost imperceptible glow, as if the vault itself was reacting to their presence. It's not alive, Sarah replied, her voice steady, but it's connected to something. The anomaly. It's manipulating the data here, changing things in ways we can't fully understand yet. The deeper they went, the more the vault seemed to pulse with energy. Data cores that should have been inert flickered erratically, displaying half-formed holograms and corrupted records. It was as though the knowledge stored here was beginning to dissolve, its integrity slowly being consumed by the anomaly. Do you feel that? Mara asked, her voice strained. She was carrying a portable shield emitter that was supposed to protect against quantum fluctuations, but even it seemed to struggle against the growing intensity of the anomaly. This thing isn't just consuming the data. It's feeding off it. The more we get close to the core, the stronger it gets. Farron's energy flickered briefly, and the VOR's cool voice cut through the tension. Correct. This anomaly is no mere disturbance. It is integrating itself with the data cores, merging with them, as though seeking to rewrite the fabric of knowledge itself. We need to stop it, Elijah said, his voice a mixture of determination and frustration. We don't have much time. How much longer do we have before this whole place goes up in flames? Sarah checked her tablet, which had been receiving intermittent updates from the Axiom. The countdown had dropped to 4 hours and 26 minutes, but as the anomaly grew in intensity, the calculations were becoming increasingly unreliable. We'll need to move faster, Sarah said, her jaw tightening. The core's just ahead. If we can access it and isolate the anomaly, we might be able to stop it. But we'll have to act quickly. The vault's core. A glimpse into the void. They reached the heart of the vault, a massive chamber where the last unbreached data cores stood. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Towering over them, The core was a twisting, organic structure, its surface pulsating with strange, shifting patterns of light. The colors seemed to shift in a way that defied logic, a moving fractal of energy that hummed with a quiet, almost hypnotic rhythm. "This is it," Kala whispered, stepping forward. Her fingers hovered above the surface of the core as she tried to interface with it. But the moment she touched it, the patterns on the core intensified. A low, discordant hum filled the chamber, and the very air seemed to vibrate. "We're too late," Orion said, his voice tense. "It's already adapting. Whatever we try to do now." Before he could finish, a series of violent electrical pulses erupted from the core. The chamber filled with the sound of crackling energy, and a shimmering, translucent barrier surrounded the core, locking them inside. The storm outside howled louder, reverberating in the walls like a living thing. "We're trapped," Mara shouted, pulling at the controls for her shield emitter, but the energy surrounding them was too strong. "Nothing's getting through this." The temperature in the room plummeted, and Sarah's breath came out in visible puffs. She looked at Elijah, who was already analyzing the core with a knowing expression. "This is a trap," he said, his tone flat. "The core isn't just defending itself. It's trying to contain us. It's trying to learn from us." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Learn?" "Yeah," Elijah said, stepping forward. "It's not just a data storage system anymore. This thing, it's evolving. It's using the very knowledge it's storing to grow, adapt, and think for itself." As if on cue, the core's surface shimmered once again, and a burst of light erupted from the center, illuminating the chamber in blinding brilliance. The light seemed to come from all directions at once, pulling them inward like a gravitational force. Sarah felt herself pulled forward, unable to fight the force, and instinctively reached out, grabbing onto the nearest object, a conduit running along the wall. "Don't touch it," Elijah yelled, but it was too late. Sarah's fingers brushed the surface of the core. The moment she made contact, a flood of images and data flooded her mind. It was a cacophony of thoughts and visions, alien civilizations, ancient technologies, forbidden knowledge, each image overlapping the next with overwhelming speed. She saw the rise and fall of worlds, the wars and the peace treaties, the building of civilizations and their ultimate collapse. But one thing stood out above all, a dark shape looming at the edge of the galaxy, hidden in the shadows of the void. The anomaly. It wasn't just a natural occurrence, it was a creation, a force designed to reshape the galaxy. The images vanished as quickly as they had come, leaving Sarah breathless, her heart pounding. "I saw it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw the source of the anomaly. It's not just here, it's everywhere. And it's trying to spread. The choice, fight or flee." The chamber shook violently, the core's pulses intensifying as if reacting to Sarah's vision. The barrier around them flickered, its energy becoming unstable. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance, like a thread about to snap. "We don't have time for this," Mara shouted. "We need to make a decision, now." Sarah snapped her head to the side, looking at her team. They were all staring at her, waiting for instructions. The walls of the vault seemed to close in on them, the storm outside roaring louder than ever. The core was pushing back, fighting for control, and the anomaly was growing stronger by the second. "Kala, get us out of here," Sarah ordered, her voice unwavering. "Orion, prepare the extraction plan. Farron, I will stabilize the anomaly as much as I can." Farron interrupted, their energy form pulsing brightly. "But the data core must be isolated, or the anomaly will continue to grow." Sarah turned to Elijah, who was already moving toward the core with a determined look on his face. "Elijah, no," she called out, but he didn't hesitate. With one swift motion, he activated a series of emergency override protocols on the core. "This is our only shot," Elijah said over his shoulder, his voice grim. "I'm triggering a failsafe to disconnect the core from the anomaly. It might destabilize everything, but it's the only way to stop it from spreading. The team exchanged a look of uncertainty, but there was no time for second guesses. "Do it," Sarah said. Elijah activated the failsafe. The breaking point. The vault's core rumbled, its surface cracking open as waves of energy cascaded outward, expanding in every direction. The storm outside intensified, and Sarah felt the gravitational pull of the anomaly growing stronger, threatening to tear them apart. But amidst the chaos, something remarkable happened. The core's connection to the anomaly began to falter, its pulses weakening as the failsafe took hold. The anomaly's grip on Archive World Epsilon started to loosen, the energy waves distorting in every direction. "Is it working?" Kala shouted, watching the energy readings with wide eyes. "It's stabilizing," Farron said, their voice calm but laced with urgency. "The core's breach is being contained, but we must act quickly, or the anomaly will regenerate." Elijah gave Sarah a look that said it all. Time's running out. With the core's energy weakening, they had only moments to escape. The walls of the vault were beginning to crumble, and the very fabric of the galaxy was on the verge of tearing apart. "Move," Sarah shouted, as the team sprinted toward the exit, the core's last desperate pulse ringing in their ears. A fragile victory. They barely made it out. As the axiom pulled away from the planet, the anomaly's grip loosened, but it hadn't been fully contained. Sarah knew the battle was far from over. The galaxy was on the edge of something greater, something darker, and the anomaly was only the beginning. As they escaped into deep space, Sarah glanced back at the planet disappearing into the distance. The Axiom's engines hummed quietly, but inside, her thoughts were racing. The anomaly was still out there, and they had only just scratched the surface. Into the abyss. The Axiom drifted silently through the void, the stars outside gleaming like diamonds on a black velvet canvas. Sarah sat in the command center, her eyes focused on the flickering holographic display of Archive World Epsilon, slowly receding behind them. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. "How long until we reach the outer rim?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but laced with an edge of uncertainty. 4 hours, Elijah replied, his tone clipped as he scanned the latest data. He stood next to her, arms crossed, staring out into the darkness. The anomaly is still destabilizing, but it's clear it wasn't a random event. This wasn't just a freak occurrence. It's a signal, and it's spreading. We need to figure out its source. Agreed, Sarah said, tapping a few commands on her tablet. We need answers, and the sooner, the better. Farron, the VOR archivist, floated silently nearby, their energy forms shimmering with subtle radiance. For all their vast intelligence, the VOR had not spoken much since they'd left Archive World Epsilon. Sarah knew they were processing the events at a pace far faster than any of them could comprehend, but it still felt like something was missing. "You've been quiet, Farron," Sarah said, glancing at the VOR. "What's going through your mind?" Farron's energy pulses flickered, almost like a sigh. The anomaly is far beyond a simple quantum disturbance. It has patterns, intentions embedded within it. It's as if someone, or something, has intentionally set it in motion. The data we saw at the core was but a small fragment of a much larger design. This is no mere accident. Someone's pulling the strings. Mara asked, her voice skeptical. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I'm not ruling it out. After what we've seen, anything's possible. I don't know, Sarah murmured, rubbing her temples. But it's clear now that the galaxy isn't just dealing with some random disaster. There's a reason this anomaly is happening, a reason it targeted Archive World Epsilon. And whatever that reason is, it's only the beginning, a disturbing signal. As the Axiom cruised further into the outer rim, the crew felt the weight of the unknown press down on them. The anomaly's unpredictable behavior had left them with more questions than answers. They had hoped for a brief moment of respite, But their next discovery was far more troubling than anything they had expected. A signal. It wasn't anything like the normal communications or transmissions the ship would encounter. No, this was something different. Something ancient. The signal came through as a burst of encrypted noise, sharp and dissonant at first, before a clear pattern began to emerge. Mara, who was stationed at the communications panel, adjusted her controls. "I think we've got something," she said, her brow furrowing. "It's not just interference. There's a message buried deep within this chaos. It's old, really old. Can you decrypt it?" Sarah asked, leaning forward, her instincts sharp. "Give me a second," Mara muttered, fingers flying across the console. "It's using a language I've never seen before, but I think I can." The console suddenly went dark. The lights flickered, and the hum of the ship's engines stuttered. The cold, metallic voice echoed through the axiom, unmistakably alien in its cadence. "Warning. The end is near. You have been warned. Prepare for the arrival of the architects." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The message was short, but its implications were far-reaching. Architects. Who or what were they? "Did you get that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mara's face was pale. I did. But there's more. The signal's still trying to get through. It's like it's repeating, looping back, like it's trying to communicate with us, or maybe trying to warn us. Can you lock onto the source?" Sarah pressed. "We need to find out where this is coming from." "I'm trying," Mara said, her fingers moving faster. "But whoever, or whatever, sent this has made sure it's nearly impossible to trace. It's like they want to stay hidden." A sudden beep interrupted their conversation. A new alert flashed on the holographic display. An unexpected object had entered their path. "Captain," Elijah said, turning from the tactical station. "There's a ship, massive, just ahead. It's not showing up on standard scans. It's cloaked, but the system's picking up residual energy signatures. Whoever they are, they're well-equipped." "Are they hostile?" Sarah asked, her tone sharp, though her mind raced with the implications. Could this be linked to the mysterious architects? "Can't tell yet," Elijah responded, scanning the readouts. "But I'd suggest we proceed cautiously. Whoever they are, they're cloaked for a reason." First contact. The Axiom glided closer to the unknown ship, its hull barely visible in the surrounding darkness. There was something eerie about it. No lights, no visible markings, no indication of life within it. The only sign of its presence was the faint, distorted energy field surrounding it. "We're approaching," Sarah said, keeping her voice even. "We'll attempt contact, but stay alert. This could be our only chance to learn something about the architects." The communication console crackled to life, and a distorted image appeared in the center of the room. A figure, humanoid but alien, shrouded in shadow. The voice that followed was low and chilling, almost mechanical. "You should not have come." The word sent a shock through the crew. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary encounter. This wasn't just a random ship. This was deliberate. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice steady but commanding. "What do you know about the architects?" The figure hesitated, then replied, its tone tinged with resignation. "The architects are coming. You cannot stop them. You cannot fight them. They are the end." "What are they?" Elijah asked, leaning forward. "What do you know about this anomaly?" "The anomaly is their messenger. It is how they bring their influence to every corner of the galaxy. But it is only a signal, a warning. When it reaches its peak, they will come, and all who remain will fall under their control." Sarah's mind raced. "Control? How do you know this? Who are you working for?" The figure's face twisted in an unsettling smile. "You would not understand. We are nothing but shadows in the path of the architects. But you are still free. You still have a choice." "Choice?" Sarah repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What choice?" The figure leaned closer to the screen. "You can stop them, but only if you embrace what they represent. If you join them, you will be spared." "Never," Sarah said, her voice cold with conviction. "We won't surrender." The figure's eyes glowed for a moment. Then the transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only a deep silence in its wake. The decision. The crew stared at the empty screen, the weight of the alien's words sinking in. The architects were real. They were coming, and they had the power to change everything. "We have a choice," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the silence. "But it's not a choice we're going to make lightly." Elijah turned to face her. "What's our next move, Captain?" Sarah paused, her gaze drifting to the vast expanse of space beyond the Axiom's viewport. The galaxy stretched out before her, so vast, so unknowable. And yet, within that boundless void, the architects were waiting. "We need to find out more," Sarah said finally. "We need to learn everything we can about the architects, their plans, and how we can stop them." "How do we do that?" Mara asked. "One step at a time," Sarah replied, her eyes resolute. "One step at a time. We're going to fight for our future, no matter what it takes." Echoes of the architects. The Axiom drifted deeper into the dark recesses of the outer rim, the silent hum of the ship a stark contrast to the intensity of the moment. The alien figure's chilling words replayed in Sarah's mind, each repetition sending a cold shiver down her spine. "The architects are coming. You cannot stop them." For the past several hours, the crew had been in a tense silence, everyone absorbed in their own thoughts, trying to make sense of what had just happened. No one spoke the obvious truth. The galaxy was facing something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The anomaly wasn't just a disturbance. It was a harbinger, a signal of something far worse. And now, the mysterious ship they'd encountered had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving nothing but the faintest trace of its energy signature, like a fading echo. "Any signs of the anomaly?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence as she leaned over the tactical console. Elijah, who had been monitoring the situation, turned to face her. "It's still there, but it's different," he replied, his voice tense. "It's no longer growing exponentially. It's as if it's waiting for something, building towards some unknown threshold." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Waiting for what?" "Maybe for us," Elijah said grimly, "or maybe for them. Whoever they are," Sarah muttered. "We can't afford to wait. We need to act before it's too late." A strange transmission. Just as Sarah was about to issue new orders, the communications panel lit up, and a strange transmission began to play through the speakers. It wasn't a distress call or a normal message. It was something much more subtle. An encoded frequency, buried beneath layers of static. "Another one?" Mara asked, narrowing her eyes at the screen. Sarah nodded. "This time, we're listening." The signal was faint but persistent, and as it grew clearer, Sarah's eyes widened. The transmission seemed to be a series of fragmented images, appearing on the holographic display in disjointed bursts. A vast, golden city, strange, towering structures unlike anything they had seen before, and a symbol, a complex, interlocking set of geometric shapes that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "What is this?" Mara whispered, her fingers hovering over the controls. "This doesn't look like any language I've seen." "It's not a language," Farron's voice interrupted. The VOR energy form had been observing quietly from the side, their thoughts as unfathomable as their presence. "This is something older. A message from a civilization far beyond your understanding. It is not meant to be read with words, but with intuition." Sarah's eyes flicked to the shimmering form of Farron. "Can you help us understand it?" she asked. Farron paused, then pulsed faintly. "I will attempt to translate the energy signatures. It may take time, but it is possible." As the VOR began to hum, focusing their energy on the transmission, the fragmented images started to solidify. The city, which had seemed a distant vision, was now clearer. Towering spires loomed over a civilization that appeared to be in the midst of a ritual, an ancient, almost sacred process. But there was something off about it, an unnatural stillness, a sense of overwhelming silence that seemed to permeate even the holographic images. The final image caught Sarah's breath, a black obelisk standing at the center of the city, towering over everything. It radiated a dark, powerful energy, and the symbol from earlier glowed at its base. "That's them," Elijah said softly, staring at the symbol on the obelisk. "Those must be the architects." The decision to move forward. The message was clear, but it left Sarah with more questions than answers. The architects had created something far beyond anything the crew had ever seen, an ancient power, a civilization that existed on the edges of known space, far from the reach of the Galactic Council. And now, it was clear, the architects weren't just coming. They had already set their plans in motion. "Farran," Sarah said, her voice steady, "can you tell us anything about what the message means? What do the symbols indicate?" Farran's form pulsed again. "The symbols represent a chain of events. The golden city you see is a memory, an archive, left behind by a civilization long lost to time. The obelisk is the key. It is an ancient device, one that channels the architect's power, a power that cannot be resisted by conventional means. But there is more. The anomaly. It is a signal, yes, but it is also a trap, a way for the architects to gather energy, to bring the galaxy into alignment with their will." Sarah swallowed hard. The implications were staggering. So this anomaly, this thing we've been chasing, it's not just a threat. It's a means to an end. They'd been preparing for this for eons. "Yes," Farran confirmed. "And now, they are nearly ready to begin the final phase of their plan. The galaxy will fall into chaos if they are allowed to complete it." Sarah's mind raced. If the architects were truly preparing to make their move, there wasn't much time. "We need to find the obelisk. It's the key to everything. It's the only way we can stop them." Elijah stepped forward. "But where do we even begin? We have no idea where it is, and if the architects are behind this, they'll be guarding it." "We'll start with what we know," Sarah replied, determination hardening her voice. "We know the signal originates in this region. We know the Axiom is one of the few ships capable of navigating these strange energy fields without being destroyed. And we know the architects have left clues for us, like this message. We just need to follow them." Mara gave a hesitant nod. "That's a lot of assumptions, Sarah." "It's all we got," Sarah said. "And right now, it's enough." The hidden path. As the Axiom continued its journey through the outer rim, the crew was gripped by a sense of urgency. The closer they got to the signal source, the more unsettled they became. The ship's systems were barely keeping up with the increasingly chaotic energy surges. At times, the Axiom seemed to sway under an invisible pressure, as though the fabric of reality itself were warping. "We're getting closer," Elijah said, his voice tight as he monitored the ship's trajectory. "I can feel it. The anomaly is stronger here." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the star-filled expanse. "We're on the edge of something much bigger than ourselves. Whatever happens next, we have to be ready for it." Farran's energy flickered once again. "The obelisk's location is hidden. Even my people cannot track it with precision. But the energy trails, they are stronger here, on the fringes of the anomaly. We must go deeper." "Then we go deeper," Sarah said with resolve. "Keep the engine steady, Elijah. Full power ahead. We can't waste any more time." As the Axiom surged forward, the stars in front of them began to warp, bending and twisting as if they were alive. The unknown loomed closer, an ancient, incomprehensible force that would either save or destroy them. And they had no choice but to move toward it.